A sea of crushed Egyptian chariots washes up on a muddy shore. The smell of salt and wet wood heavy in the air. You are grateful. So you sing. God does something good. And the human response is to write a track about it. And it does carry that weight sometimes. Just like Miriam at the Red Sea. She is facing an empire, the crushing weight of Rome, and the corrupt dynasty of Herod. Just like Deborah. She is declaring that the enemy is already defeated. Look at the grammar she uses. She does not say God will bring down rulers from their thrones. She sings in the past tense. He has brought down rulers. He has filled the hungry. Her son is not even born yet. The cross is 3 decades away. Rome will rule for centuries more. But Mary understands how a song works. She is not wishing for a revolution. She is announcing a completed reality. She pulls the ancient promises made to Abraham out of the past. She pulls the cosmic reign of her unborn son out of the future. She weaves them together in the present tense, vibrating the air of that quiet house with a truth that Herod cannot touch and Caesar cannot stop. The song anchors her to a kingdom that is already won. Mary sang a regime change into the atmosphere, from the temporary safety of a relative's living room. But the true test of this weapon happens when the singer has no safety at all. But if you look closer at where these songs actually appear, at the exact moments the prose stops and the poetry begins. The true test comes decades later, when the music is violently shoved behind iron doors, and the singers are bleeding in the dark. We think of ancient prisons as holding cells. Rome designed them as psychological weapons. Analyze the mechanics of the inner dungeon in the 1st century. It is an intentional sensory void. There is no sunlight. There is no airflow. There is only the suffocating stench of raw sewage and rot. There is the heavy scrape of iron against damp stone. There is the burning. A feverish sting of open flesh pressed against a freezing floor. The architecture is meant to break the human mind. You are supposed to sit in the pitch blackness. You are supposed to listen to the irregular breathing of dying men. You are supposed to lose your grip on time. You are supposed to forget who you are. That is the specific environment of Acts, chapter 16. Paul and Silas are stripped naked in the public square. They are beaten with lead-tipped rods. They are dragged into the deepest hole in the city of Philippi. Their feet are violently clamped into wooden stocks. They cannot move. It is midnight. The darkness is absolute. And they start singing. The Greek text says, they were praying and singing hymns to God. And the other prisoners were listening. Of course they were. At the Hebrew and Greek words used to describe them, you start to see something that changes how you read every piece of music in the text. They had never heard this frequency in this room. A Roman dungeon is engineered to extract screams. It is calibrated to manufacture despair. It is not built to contain a melody. But Paul and Silas understand the ancient technology of the song. They remember Miriam at the edge of the water. They remember Deborah in the flooded valley. They remember David in the haunted royal bedroom. They know that sound dictates reality. They do not pray for an earthquake. They do not scream for a rescue party. They simply deploy the weapon, and the geology of the earth responds. The narrative is shockingly abrupt. Suddenly, there is a violent earthquake. The tectonic plates shift. The foundations of the prison are shaken. All the heavy doors fly open. Every single chain falls off. The song is not a coping mechanism to pass the time. It is a seismic disruption. When the praise hits the atmosphere of the dungeon, the physical materials literally cannot hold the frequency. The presence of God inhabits the music, and the Roman structure collapses under the sheer density of that presence. Iron brackets snap. Heavy timber splinters. The empire drops its prisoners. A song broke the darkest room in the world. The songs are not a reaction to the narrative. They are the engine of the narrative. This is not background music, but every song we have seen so far is localized. A river in Egypt, a valley in Canaan, a bedroom in Jerusalem, a prison in Philippi. What happens when the song leaves the earth? What happens when the melody finally breaks out of time completely? An old man sits in a penal colony on the island of Patmos, the wind carrying the sharp bite of sea salt and sulfur. He is surrounded by the crushing authority of the Roman Empire. exiled to a rock to die. And then the sky rips open. John is pulled up into the control room of the universe in Revelation chapter 5. He sees a heavy scroll sealed with 7 seals, and he begins to weep because no one has the authority to open it. Then, a slaughtered lamb steps forward to take the parchment. 4 living creatures and 24 elders fall to the ground, holding golden bowls full of incense and stringed harps. And the text says, "And they sang a new song." The word John uses for song here is the Greek ode. It appears 7 times in the book of Revelation, and its usage here reveals the final form of the biblical weapon. The noun ode, where we get the English word ode, comes from the root verb ado, meaning to sing or to chant a memorial. But look at where this specific word shows up later in John's vision. This is the pattern God himself established for shifting the atmosphere of the physical world. The question of these embedded songs isn't, are they feeling joyful? In Revelation chapter 15, verse 3, the scene shifts. John sees a sea of glass mixed with fire. Standing beside the water are the martyrs, the ones who survived the beast, holding harps of God. And John says, they are singing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb, the ode of Moses. That specific detail changes everything. Thousands of years earlier, a group of slaves stood by the Red Sea and used a melody to organize the physical world. Now, at the end of human history, the exact same song is being sung by the martyrs standing beside a sea of glass. The weapon has survived the end of the world. When John links the song of Moses to the throne room of heaven, he reveals the loop. Heaven is not a silent sanctuary. It is vibrating with the exact same frequency that split the water in Egypt. The song is not a temporary human reaction to an earthly victory. It is the eternal architecture of the kingdom. In Revelation, the ode is what happens when the battle is permanently over. It is the sound of absolute jurisdiction. When the elders sing the new song, they are not putting on a concert for the Lamb. They are verbally installing him onto the throne of the cosmos. From Miriam at the mud of the Red Sea to John at the Sea of Glass, it is this. What are they doing to the unseen realm when they open their mouths? We treat worship as a genre of music. The biblical text has been trying to show you the trajectory of a melody. The music was always meant to move from the dirt to the throne, but you are not standing on a sea of glass yet. You are still walking through the dirt. You are still breathing the air of a broken, chaotic world. And that brings us to the most violent theft taking place in your life right now. You are not standing on a sea of glass yet. You are sitting in traffic. You are staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator. You are holding a medical report, or a bank statement, or a text message that just fractured your sense of security. You are breathing the air of a broken, chaotic world. But here's the part I keep coming back to. When I look at the progression of these ancient singers from the mud of the Red Sea to the suffocating darkness of a Roman dungeon, I realize what the actual target of the enemy is. The shadow in King Saul's bedroom did not care about his royal crown. The magistrates in Philippi did not just want to whip Paul's back, they wanted to bury his voice in the dark. They wanted the silence. If you are in a season where the air in your own house feels heavy, where anxiety sits in your chest like a physical weight, we treat it as a warm-up before a sermon. They treated it as a tactical strike. They understood something about the architecture of reality, pressing against your ribs. You need to recognize what is actually happening. You are being conditioned to be quiet. You are being taught to sit in the dark and listen to the irregular breathing of your own fears. Exactly like the architects of the Roman prison designed. You are letting the arbitrary whims of your circumstances dictate the atmosphere of your mind. The silence in your life is not a neutral absence of sound. It is a surrendered territory. When you stop singing, when you stop letting the shir and the Tehillah cross your lips, you are giving up the very weapon designed to soki, force the darkness out of the room. You are leaving the physical space around you completely undefended. We have bought into the lie that we have to feel good to sing. We treat worship as a symptom of relief. We wait for the breakthrough to pick up the tambourine. We wait for the iron doors to fly open before we open our mouths. But Miriam did not wait for the desert to be easy. David did not wait for the king to be sane. Paul and Silas did not wait for the sun to come up. The sting of the whip was still burning into their open flesh that we have largely forgotten. They knew that sound does not just fill space. Sound organizes it. The heavy wooden stocks were still biting into their ankles. They sang into the pitch blackness precisely because it was pitch black. They knew that if you want to shift the jurisdiction of a haunted room, you have to vibrate the air with a truth that is higher than the walls trapping you. You have to take the chaos of your current grief and lock it into the rhythm of an eternal kingdom. This changes what you do the next time panic sets in. It changes how you use your breath. Because when you step back and look at the entire scope of the biblical record, you see a singular, undeniable thread woven through the violence of human history. A nation of slaves sang at the edge of the water, and a tyrant's army sank into the mud. A judge sang over a flooded valley, and the iron chariots of Canaan broke apart. A shepherd sang in a paranoid king's bedroom, and a suffocating shadow was forced to flee. A pregnant teenager sang in a quiet stone house, and the thrones of human empires began to crack. A savior sang a hymn before walking into a dark garden, and the terror of the cross was already defeated. To feel the weight of this, you cannot just read the lyrics. You have to trace the thread of music. Two prisoners sang bleeding in a Roman dungeon, and the tectonic plates of the earth shattered their chains. A sea of martyrs sang standing on glass, mixed with fire, and the absolute jurisdiction of heaven was permanently installed. Same weapon, same God. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the timing. Not a single one of these songs was sung from a place of comfort. Miriam still had 40 years of brutal desert ahead of her. David was still a hunted fugitive sleeping in caves. Mary was still carrying a scandalous pregnancy back to a judgmental town. The whip marks on Paul's back were still bleeding on the stone floor. They did not wait for the pain to end to open their mouths. They did not wait for the light to return to declare the victory. If you are in a season where the silence feels deafening, where the iron doors of your current reality feel permanently locked, do not wait for the earthquake. Do not wait for the circumstances to align before you decide to speak. The song is not the reward for the prison breaking open. The song is the hammer that breaks it. And may the God who responds to the frequency of his people give you a melody, from a crushed empire in Exodus all the way to a sea of glass in Revelation. You have to watch what happens to the physical world, in the deepest part of your midnight, and shatter the chains of whatever is trying to hold you in the dark. If this opened something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who needs to find their voice again. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And a woman picks up a tambourine. A judge stands over a valley slick, with rain and Canaanite blood, every time a human being decides to sing instead of speak. And the place to start is the very first time the biblical text records a melody, because the first song in the Bible does not happen in a sanctuary. It happens on a graveyard. Exodus, chapter 15. A nation of former slaves stands on the eastern bank of the Red Sea, the salt drying on their skin, staring at the water. Behind them is freedom. In front of them, floating in the surf, are the splintered chariot wheels and the drowned horses of the Egyptian Empire. For 400 years, there has been no music. If you read the first 14 chapters of Exodus, you find groaning. You find the crack of leather whips against bare backs. You find the squelch of mud and the heavy breathing of brickmakers. You hear cries of agony going up to God, but you do not hear a choir. 4 centuries of acoustic silence under the chaotic, crushing boot of Pharaoh. Then the water walls collapse, and immediately, the text says, "Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord." The word translated sung and song here is the Hebrew shur. It is the very first time the word appears in the biblical text, and its usage here sets the precedent for the rest of the book. As a noun, shur means a song or a lyric poem. The iron chariots of her enemy are bogged down in the mud, and she lifts her voice. A shepherd boy hides in a limestone cave, but linguists point out that the ancient Semitic root carries the idea of arranging, ordering, or linking things together like a chain or a bracelet. We think of a song as an overflow of emotion. The ancients understood a song as an ordering of reality. For 400 years, Israel's reality was dictated by the chaotic, arbitrary whims of a human dictator. Their time was not their own. Their bodies were not their own. Their voices were restricted to the guttural sounds of labor and grief. But when they stand on the shore and watch the empire sink into the muck of the seabed, they do not just cheer. They do not just breathe a sigh of relief. They sing. They use shur. They take the chaotic trauma of the past 4 centuries and they lock it into rhythm, meter, and melody. They are organizing the narrative of their own deliverance. The first song in the Bible is not a spontaneous expression of happiness. It is the establishment of a new jurisdiction. When Miriam picks up her tambourine and the women follow her with dancing, they are vibrating the air of the wilderness with a brand new truth. Pharaoh does not own the sound waves anymore. The lyrics of Exodus 15 declare that Yahweh is a warrior, listening to the footsteps of a paranoid king hunting him down. And he writes a melody on a stringed instrument, that his right hand shatters the enemy, that he is leading them to a holy dwelling. They are singing their new identity into the physical atmosphere. They are linking the truth of what just happened into a chain that they can carry with them into the desert. Shir becomes the tool to anchor a wandering people to an eternal reality. But this seaside melody is only the introduction. It establishes what a song is. It shows us that music is the boundary line between slavery and freedom. But what happens when the song moves inland? What happens when the music is not just used to celebrate a victory, but to actually win the war? Rain falls. A river breaches its banks. 900 iron chariots sink. Canaanite soldiers abandon their armor. They run. They bleed. They die. And a woman named Deborah watches the carnage from the high ground. You find the scene in Judges chapter 4 and 5. For 20 years, Israel has been choked out by a Canaanite king named Jabin and his brutal commander, Sisera. The oppression is total. The disarmament is absolute. The text says there was not a single shield or spear to be found among 40,000 men in Israel. No iron, no weapons, no defense. The roads are abandoned. People sneak through the wilderness on footpaths just to survive. The nation is paralyzed by fear. A teenage girl, carrying a scandal that could get her stoned to death, stands in the Judean hill country and belts out a poem of political revolution. Then, the storm breaks over Mount Tabor. The Kishon River floods. The Canaanite war machine is bogged down in the mud. Sisera flees on foot to a nomad's tent, where a woman named Jael gives him a bowl of warm milk, waits for him to fall asleep, and drives a tent peg through his skull. The tyrant is dead. The army is broken. And immediately, Deborah sings. Judges 5 is one of the oldest pieces of poetry in the entire biblical canon, and it is violent. She sings about the stars fighting from their courses. She sings about the river sweeping the enemy away. She praises the woman who held the hammer. She vividly mocks the mother of Sisera waiting at the window for a son who will never come home. This is not a polite hymn. It is a battlefield execution. We are conditioned to think of worship as gentle. We think of acoustic guitars and closed eyes. Deborah is standing over a valley of corpses and singing a taunt over the gods of Canaan. Canaan worshipped Baal, the storm god. Baal was supposed to control the rain, but Yahweh hijacked Baal's domain, flooded the river, and drowned Baal's worshippers. Deborah is using a song to establish dominance. She is rubbing the enemy's face in their own defeat. She is taking the physical victory of the mud and the tent peg, and she is etching it into the spiritual atmosphere. The song ensures that Israel will never forget who actually sent the rain. 2 men sit in a Roman dungeon. Their feet are locked in wooden stocks. Their backs are flayed open by lead-tipped whips. The song becomes the monument. The text says the land had peace for 40 years. The music held the peace. The melody kept the enemy at bay. Miriam sang at the sea. Deborah sang over the mud. Both women used music to organize the chaos of a broken empire. But centuries later, the music changes. The battlefield moves from the mud of a valley to the hidden chambers of the human mind. A shepherd boy picks up an instrument. And the song becomes something else entirely. We treat the Book of Psalms like a hymnal, a collection of religious poetry meant to comfort us when we are sad. The ancient world did not see it that way. They saw it as an armory. Look at 1 Samuel chapter 16. The most powerful man in Israel is trapped in his own bedroom, choking on terror. A tormenting spirit is suffocating King Saul, causing him to spiral into violent paranoia. No iron sword in the royal armory can touch an unseen enemy, and no military strategy can secure the borders of a fractured mind. So his advisors do not send for a general, they send for a teenager with a lyre. David walks into that darkened, sweat-stained room, sits in the heavy air, and at midnight, in pitch blackness, they start singing. Same strange response, again and again. Most people read the Bible and skip the songs, and begins to pluck the strings. And the text says, the tormenting spirit is forced to depart. To understand the mechanics of what is happening in that room, you have to look at the language David left behind. The collection of songs we call the Psalms has a very different title in the original language. In Hebrew, the entire book is called the Tehillah. The root is the Hebrew noun Tehillah. It translates as praise, but specifically a song of praise, derived from the verb halal, which means to shine, to boast, or to celebrate wildly. But Tehillah is not just a description of a sound. According to David himself, it is a spiritual building material. In Psalm, Kaksi Kumenta Kaksi, verse 3, David reveals the architectural blueprint of his own music. He says to God, "You are holy," enthroned on the Tehillah of Israel. That one verb changes everything. The song is not a distraction from the panic. It is a habitation. David is not playing background music to soothe a king's frayed nerves. He is building a throne in the middle of a war zone. When the strings vibrate and the Tehillah fills the air of the chamber, it creates a space that the presence of Yahweh literally occupies. And because two things, we treat them like lyrical interludes, like a musical break in a stage play that you can safely fast forward through to get back to the actual plot, cannot occupy the same space at the same time. The presence of the song forces the presence of the tormenting spirit to vacate the premises. It is a simple matter of spiritual displacement. If you have ever felt the kind of unseen, suffocating weight that King Saul felt, and this translation is starting to shift how you view the weapons you have been given, you're exactly who this channel is for. Hit subscribe and drop a thought in the comments. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So David keeps playing. He uses Tehillah to construct a throne of sound in a haunted room. He proves that the right song, sung in the darkest space, actually shifts the authority of that space. The music becomes the method of occupation. But David was a future king, sitting in a royal palace, playing for the current monarch. What happens when the singer has no earthly power at all? The boy king used a song to drive a shadow out of a bedroom. But 1,000 years later, a peasant girl is going to use a song to turn the entire political order of the world upside down. Dust settles on the stone steps of a house in the Judean hill country. A teenager named Mary stands breathless from the climb. If you grew up in church, you probably assume singing in the biblical text is just an expression of mood. You are happy. So you sing, the cold mountain wind pulling at her clothes. She is carrying a secret in her womb that defies biology. She is carrying a scandal that carries a death sentence under the law of Moses. She crosses the threshold into the house of her relative Elizabeth. An unborn prophet leaps in Elizabeth's abdomen. A blessing is spoken out loud into the heavy air. And Mary begins to sing. You find the lyrics in Luke chapter 1. It is a piece of poetry the church calls the Magnificat, named after its opening Latin translation. For centuries, artists have painted this moment in soft pastels, turning Mary into a quiet, fragile porcelain figure gently humming about her baby. But read the words she actually forces out of her lungs. She does not sing about her own anxiety. She does not sing about the whispers. that will haunt her in Nazareth. She sings about thrones crashing to the ground. She sings about the rich being stripped of their wealth and sent away completely empty. She sings about the low-born being exalted, the hungry chewing on a feast, and the empires of men being dismantled piece by piece. The Magnificat is not a polite lullaby. It is a political manifesto. Mary stands on that limestone floor and uses a melody to declare war on the existing order of the world.